Warning: the following podcast may contain material that is inappropriate for listeners that are under the age of 18, are easily offended, or get annoyed listening to the rantings of holier-than-thou know-it-alls that are anything but.
And we are back. This is episode number 201 of the Anime World Order podcast. We have survived Otakon 2021. We come to you from a future where we did not get Ghost in the Shell or Bubblegum Crisis. We just got Dominion Tank Police.
We did have a lot of boomers, though.
Yes, that's true. And they are the biggest problem. I am Gerald Rathkolb, and with me, as usual...
Hey folks, this is Daryl Surratt.
And hey, this is Clarissa.
And for this special segment where we are talking about Otakon 2021, we have with us a special guest, which you have heard already. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, my name's Evan Minto. I'm from the Anigamers podcast and the Anigamers blog, as well as I'm sure we'll talk about, a little thing called Azuki.
Yes, it's the rule that every time Evan is on, he has a different occupation. So the first time he was on, he maybe might have just been Anigamers, or it was with Crunchyroll, and then he was with the Web Archive, and now he is with Azuki. What is Azuki, Evan?
Azuki is a digital manga streaming service. It's sort of like Netflix, where you, rather than downloading ebooks, you read everything in the apps or on the website. We launched like about a month and a half ago, back at the end of June. It's a pretty big deal for me. 2 times ago, like you said, when I was on here, I was working as a sort of just a low-level engineer at Crunchyroll and doing podcasting and stuff there. But this is something where I am actually one of the co-founders of it, and I'm in charge of marketing as well as lots of other stuff. And we're working with Kodansha USA right now, as well as Kaiten Books, and putting out a bunch of their manga. It's $4.99 a month, subscription service, kind of Netflix style.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited about it. I don't know if you guys have tried it yet. I think we did send you like an account.
Yes, we have a login. It seems like it works pretty well. As far as selection-wise, certainly a lot of what was on Crunchyroll manga, which technically still exists, was Kodansha things. How would you say that it compares to that?
Well, I mean, I try not to like do too much. I don't know. I don't want to like say anything bad about like other people out there doing manga services, right? Because I think it's cool that there's a bunch of them. But I think that what we are doing that I'm pretty proud of is we have a really strong engineering team that's like focusing on like improving the user experience, that actual manga reading experience, as smooth as possible. And we have built-in community features that we're also planning on expanding. So on the web right now, we have comments on every chapter. And that's going to come to our iOS and Android apps soon.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, I know. Right. Well, we did have some people be like, maybe it's bad that they have comments. And it's like, well, all right, just don't read the comments. Like if you don't want to read them, it's your choice.
Technically has comments after each chapter, which I never typically look at. And the reader is designed that if I didn't tell you that there are comments, you may not know, because you'd have to go out of your way to look at them.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to like force you to read comments. It's there for people who want that. And we have had fans in there talking about stuff, which is cool. And then if you don't want to look at comments, obviously there's the legend of YouTube comments, just how bad those are. So you can, if you're worried about that, you can just not check them.
Well, hopefully they will remain as non-toxic as possible on the internet.
Yes.
We moderate them and stuff too. So
good, yeah.
It's not going to be like a cesspool of horrible stuff in there.
Yes, gotta rule that comment section with an iron fist.
That's right.
Before we get too far into it, like spell the website for everyone, because it's not what people would think.
Yep. It's azuki.co, azuki.co.
Yeah, not .com.
Like the beans?
Yeah, like the red beans.
Yes, like the beans. It's named after the red beans. It's kind of thinking about snacks that you could be eating while you're reading manga. Our tagline is your digital manga cafe, so that's kind of like the metaphor there. We're also on iOS and Android, so you can look us up in the app stores there.
Very nice.
And if you go to the website, you can go there on your phone and you can read. We have a web reader that I personally built most of. So that's something I'm particularly proud of, is you can not just like go to the website, but then download the apps. You can read it right there in your browser too.
And considering the news out of Crunchyroll this week, it might be good that you're not there right now.
The merger has finally officially gone through. Department of Justice said it's okay. No problems. So.
They did it while we were in DC. It kind of makes me think, did they time it?
Crunchyroll was purchased by Funimation for, $1.1 billion. And so now the two giants in anime are now one. as we talked about some time ago, this is usually never a good thing, at least not for the consumer.
Right.
It's almost what we say would happen was wait a year and then do their thing.
Right.
We'll see. We'll see.
This is maybe a good part for me to interject that once I was done with the Azuki pitch, I feel like everything after this is all opinions I express do not represent Azuki.
Right. Obviously, yes.
Sure. A company man,
If only
yes.
we could, summon the angry ghost of Theodore Roosevelt to do some trust busting.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you can get big enough for someone to want to split you apart.
Right.
But they did think about it for a
so
second with regards to the cartoons, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part, I do gotta say, that part it just seems, I mean, it's the way it works in America, I guess, but it seems strange to be like, all right, we're investigating this. And then apparently there were no concessions. Like, usually what they do with that, from what I've seen, right, with like telecom companies and stuff, is they say, okay, they usually say you can do it. It's fine. You can form some giant monopoly.
Right.
But you need to provide rural broadband, or they add some kind of caveat to it. And I guess they didn't do that. They just looked at it for a little while and said, yeah, I guess it's fine. You can do it.
I was going to say, I don't think they have a clue what they're looking at.
No. And I think it's pretty clear from the fact that Disney now owns practically everything that really nobody actually cares.
No.
Even Disney's thing, right? I believe, I'm not an expert on this stuff, that I think the Department of Justice or whoever else has stopped Disney from buying. I think they're not allowed to own a cable company.
Yeah.
So there's something there. There's some kind of guardrail.
Possibly they're working on that. Maybe not the movie theaters yet.
Yeah.
Somebody in the FCC remembers what it was like in the 30s because they were there, because that's how old officials are.
I'm sure it's going to come down to you can own everything on planet Earth, but your business cards must be blue.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Some ineffectual regulation.
So
can they be light blue? Okay.
we'll work
That's
on that.
fine.
But yeah, one thing that's generally not light blue is our own website, which is generally in black and white because of how objectivist we all are. We are just a bunch of Steve Ditkos. No, we're not really. But our website is animeworldorder.com, where you can get links to this episode as well as all our previous episodes, including the episodes that Evan was on. Do check out that site over there.
Listen to the Sword for Truth episode, the episode that I guess I'm the most well known for some reason.
Apparently, I don't know if that's still the case, but I'm going to say it is. But yes, that is on there. You can find it by going to the review index on that site, which is a list of all the shows that we've reviewed to date. Our email address is animeworldorder@gmail.com, where you can send in your corrections to the blatant falsehoods that we've been spreading on this podcast. For example, when we were talking about Toho not being that bad to deal with, someone pointed out, actually, Toho fucked with the Godzilla Criterion releases so that it maybe wasn't a definitive release. So maybe Toho are kind of jerks in some aspects that will prevent
some ways,
Do You Remember Love from happening. But this episode, what is our reason that we didn't have an episode out last month?
Laziness?
It's this convention. It's preparation for this convention.
Yes, preparation for Otakon 2021, which Otakon 2020 was canceled. They had an online event. Otakon 2021 did happen. It was held at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center from August 6th through the 8th, 2021. 25,543 people attending, which is shockingly high, but is down about 3,000 from 28,430.
That's a minuscule drop from what people were expecting.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was really curious to see, how busy it was going to be. And I mean, I guess I should have figured, people are so stir crazy. Having been trapped in their houses, I think everybody was sort of, desperate to go to something.
Let's address the elephant in the room that everybody is thinking right now who's listening to this, which is, why the hell would you people, Evan and AWO, why the hell would you be so irresponsible to go to an anime convention during a pandemic, during the second rise of a pandemic? Why would you be so irresponsible to do such a thing?
The fact that we're anime fans, I think, should already give you an indication that we maybe do not have the best decision-making skills.
Yeah, but it really was an issue of, we were trying to make a judgment call as to what was going to happen in a couple of months, because that beats at least, what conventions have to deal with, because they have to make the call several months, if not years in advance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and luckily for me, like, I didn't have to fly, so I figured, like, even, the day before, if I could change my mind. But also, I know the three of us are vaccinated. I'm assuming, Evan, you probably are.
Yeah, I definitely am.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but that was the thing. That was what made me decide to roll the dice on it, because by the time we got our vaccinations, which in Florida was in April, and right now Florida is once again, like, just like it was for the original strain of the virus, it's now like the worst
hellscape.
Yeah, hellscape in the planet for the Delta variant. We said, okay, well, if it's April now and people before us have been getting the vaccines between December and March, in 5 months, 4 months from now, more people will have the vaccine and hopefully it's going to be under control. And the Delta variant hadn't, like, the news of that hadn't really emerged yet. Obviously, as it turns out, there was a Delta variant. So far, anyway, I feel fine. I don't know anyone who seeming like just a small sample size, but like I don't know anyone who appears to have gotten COVID as a result of going to Otakon. We will see. It's still
not yet.
It's still only been a few days since the convention ends as we record this. And so it remains to be seen whether or not there will be a spike in cases and that it can be traced back to the convention.
I think that last part is the key. Like, how would you trace it, right? People coming from all over the place.
Yeah.
There's differing levels of state responsibility.
Well, I know that they were able to trace a lot of cases to that one, like, biker
event. Well, Sturgis, which is happening again, and those idiots that go to that stupid convention. In what's it, North Dakota or South Dakota, one of the Dakotas.
Yeah,
they like they're very vehemently like
anti-mask kind of people.
Masking, they had like a concert and
anti-vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it would have been way better if they had actually like required vaccination for the con. I wish they had, but like at the same time, so hopefully, a lot of people aren't going to get sick. And I also figured while like, the evidence seems to be that people who have been vaccinated can get the Delta variant, so far it seems like in general it's not serious. It's not like super bad. So again, like at least from my
but you can
personal
to other people.
So just so we're aware, about a week before Otakon was held was another big event, Lollapalooza.
Right, in Chicago, a music festival.
Yeah, gigantic music festival. Now with Lollapalooza, they were strict about it. They said either you are vaccinated or you have a negative COVID test within 3 days of the convention. And as of today, Lollapalooza has gone on long enough ago that as of today, it was not a super spreader event.
Right. Now, just to give some background for like the contextual like anime convention side of things, because it's 15 minutes, we've lost our whole audience at this point. It's okay. But for the sake of the historical record, fan conventions in particular have found themselves in a conundrum due to COVID-19 ever since. I think the exact date was March 11th, 2020, when the World Health Organization said, hey, coronavirus disease 2019, aka COVID-19, this is a global pandemic. The United States actually, about 2 or 3 days later, agreed and said, okay, let's start taking some actions.
Right. And so that's why so many conventions, including Otakon for 2020, were canceled or moved entirely online.
They had to close the event. Sporting events were canceled. Schools closed. Borders sealed. People started working from home. We all learned about social distancing and, needing to wear face masks and things like that.
Right.
And the reason that a lot of fan conventions, not all, but most, said we're canceling our event is because they were able to invoke a contract clause in their venues that is known as force majeure, which is the occurrence of like an act of God or extraordinary event that is beyond the reasonable control of either the convention or the venue that makes it impossible from being able to hold the event. Here's the problem.
And so they can't, it's not like they violated the contract. It's like it just couldn't.
Right.
I believe that in order to invoke that, I believe that the local government has to say something to the account of a state of emergency.
A state of emergency.
Exactly.
That's the problem that I was about to say, is that it only took a few weeks or a few months or whatever before enough members of the population and the governments said, we don't want to do this no more. Just don't feel like it. Don't want to. I want to go outside. I want to yell at Applebee's waitresses, et cetera, et cetera. And I also don't want to continue to pay out unemployment benefits.
Right.
And so there was a push to reopen things because, hey, you're flattening the curve out because it's only been a month or two and people are saying, you got to wait this out a little more. And they were like, you shut up. You don't know what's going on. And so a lot of states, including Florida and others, started to do phased reopenings. And that meant conventions could no longer invoke a force majeure clause because, hey, it's no longer completely impossible for you to do this event. So you were faced with a very tough choice. Do you do the responsible thing, cancel your event, which can result in huge fines for breach of contract, resulting in either personal bankruptcy if you're on a smaller convention. A lot of these small cons are privately run by somebody or their parents or whoever, or organizational bankruptcy because the corporation that is responsible for the event is left holding the bill. Or B, do you hold your event as scheduled, knowing full well that you may accelerate the spread of the virus? Do you want to cap attendance? But if you want to cap attendance, that means that you will make less money.
Right.
Not just that. I believe the real problem for Otakon is they rolled over memberships.
That's correct.
So you can't even cap attendance because people already paid for tickets.
Yeah, they had a double whammy of a problem because Otakon, unlike other typical conventions, they're not privately owned and they're not a for-profit corporation. They're a non-profit, which is very uncommon for anime conventions. But what they did when they canceled the 2020, they said, okay, everybody who pre-registered for 2020, your membership is good for the next year. For the next time we come in, you're already registered for that convention. And so they got to a point where, because they're nonprofit, all the money they typically make from a convention one year gets put into putting on the con the next year. And so they're not equipped to like go multiple years without holding a convention because
they have fixed costs of about $400,000.
Yeah,
and that is things like equipment they have or space or whatever it is, signage, and I believe they do have like a lawyer on staff. That's just
things
various
that aren't
things.
cheap. And so they realized they would not have the finances to survive a second year without any income if they canceled 2021. And they did, for the first time ever in January of this year, they said, hey, we got to turn to crowdfunding, raised about $34,000. And then, because they weren't sure if they were going to be able to do a 2021. And then about 2 months, a little more than 2 months before the event, they got word that the Walter E. Washington Convention Center would be reopening. And so they had about 70 days to put this con together, which is a whole lot less than the usual year and change that they would typically have. In the case of Walter E. Washington Convention Center, for background, this was previously converted over to be an emergency field hospital for COVID-19 patients. And so the facility had been upgraded with upgraded air filtration. There was UV lights on the escalator rails. There was sterilization processes for the building and things like that. And they said, okay, we can run this event. And we are not going to do anything to cap registration or anything like that because we need the money. Now, the argument was put forth on social media that says, hey, why not just let the con go bankrupt and make another nonprofit? I don't think it's that easy to just do the ADV Sentai Filmworks thing with conventions and getting contracts and getting lawyers and all sorts of stuff, especially in Washington, D.C.
Well, especially being a nonprofit. Being a nonprofit is difficult. You have to, it's very, very stringent sort of things you have to adhere to.
Obviously, they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it seems like they didn't really have an option other than to run the convention. But I don't think that means they were forced to not have a vaccine mandate, right? Or a vaccine or test mandate. That's a choice that they made.
That is a choice that they made. And here's the rationale that they gave. They said, if you force a vaccination mandate, well, then by default, that means nobody under the age of 13 gets to go to the convention.
A test or vaccine, right?
I don't have an answer as far as why they didn't mandate a test, but this is the thing that they posted online. They said, hey, a lot of families go to this convention, and so they wouldn't just leave their kids, otaku notwithstanding, but that alone would be like a significant hit because there's a lot of kids and families who go to the convention. Plus, the trouble is with vaccination proof, there is no such thing as viable vaccination proof in this country because we did not have a proper way of tracking or independently verifying like a vaccination ID the way other countries did. And so how do you train someone?
I know here you get like a card.
But that was just an appointment reminder.
But
it wasn't really
right. Well, so that like at here, like when you went to get each shot, it was like signed and like authorized, but obviously like it's hard to verify.
Right. You can buy those cards on Amazon.
You can buy those cards and you can fill out whatever you want. And how do you train Anime Con staffers to identify what's a fake and what's real when it's not like a driver's license or something like that where you can train people?
There's not a record in a system somewhere either.
Yeah. I will argue, though, that I feel like that rationale is kind of bullshit. I'm going to throw it back in their face and say that that is fucking bullshit. That, yes, there are going to be people who lie about it, but I will take that over the many, 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 many thousands of people who wouldn't be lying. And those people under 13...
They shouldn't be in a situation like this. If you're at that risk where you're immunocompromised or you're unable to get the vaccine, then please don't go to events where there are tens of thousands of people, is my personal stance.
My feeling is, that whatever their rationale is, it's bullshit. They should have said 6 weeks ago, you can't come in the door unless you have a vaccination record or a negative test.
A negative test, which honestly, even for kids could show up with a negative test, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't think that there's any restriction that they can't get tested.
No, not as far as I know. And so,
but I mean, couldn't they just scan to see if you have the microchip from the
vaccine?
That's true. What's the point if you're not using that? Yeah, like we have the RFID tag,
and that Bill Gates has put in the vaccine to from ground up children, of course, whatever the anti-vax conspiracy is.
Oh my God.
Which people believe. But like to the point of this con, with all that in place, this convention had to be put together very quickly because of the lockdowns and especially in other countries. This was a year there was no Japanese musical act. There was no big name Japanese voice actor or artists or staffers from anime. The guests they had were basically akin to what a small local convention might get, with the exception of two things. One was they were able to work with the embassy. The cultural embassy. And the cultural embassy, like, they were ready to go because they were like, yes, we will hook you up. We'll give you a kabuki demonstration. We'll bring you the Olympic torch from 2020. Stuff like that they were able to bring over. So I think that was like, okay, wow, that's cool that you have access to that. But what I was just noticing, like, people were wondering, like, for so many years we've heard, like, well, you've got to have a rave. You've got, a dance. That's like the bullshit line that insurance purposes, any Anime Con staffer will say, no, it's not a rave. It's a dance, but it's a rave. It's a fucking rave, and they were saying like, okay, you have to have that. You have to have a concert. You have to have like there's like this arms race of like, got to get like the big name hot musical act of like whoever's doing the big openings for the big popular shows currently and put on concerts and things like that. And this con had none of those things. And even despite that, like you said, only down like
5,000 plus.
Yeah, 10%. Statistically insignificant. It seemed like it was just as crowded as it usually is at the convention.
Yeah.
It's the Onion article, new music festival to just be open field to do drugs
exactly.
I mean, I think unless you had like multiple years in a row where Otakon like stopped having that stuff, it would be difficult to really gauge how much effect that would have, especially given, like, I'm sure, like I said, so many people were like desperate to get out
of the house
houses, and
these are extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, there was one year where Otakon was down like 10,000 people for kind of unexplained reasons, and the only thing they could think of, I think, was get like a really big guest the next year. But as for this year, something I wanted to bring up, I feel like the attendees were taking this pandemic more seriously than Otakon was.
I agree with that.
They seem to be good for masks.
Oh, people were really good about masks. I was surprised.
I think mask compliance
was just one or two people
virtually 100%.
Without masks.
I would say the amount of exceptions I saw was like single digits out of the tens of thousands of people that were there.
Right.
I would say attendees were generally very good about wearing the mask, having it cover their nose and their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
There were scenarios where, they said, okay, well, you can take it off to eat or drink. Some people, I did hear isolated reports of like people who did not have their masks on and were definitely not eating or drinking. And the way that the staff handled that was basically to let it be. Like they'd come up and ask someone to be like, hey, can you put your mask up? And if they refused to comply, they'd just be like, oh, okay. They were not nearly as aggressive in the enforcement of the mask policy compared to the fire hazard policies of like, hey, you're not allowed to stand in the back of the room or you're not allowed to sit down here or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, that they would be very like, okay, you guys all need to disperse. Like they'd put on the big respect my authority badge. But if someone was maybe not complying with the masks, I didn't see a single person be confronted over that.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I just want to give credit where it's due to Otakon, or maybe I guess in this case to the facility staff, because that's totally right. When inside the convention center, I experienced that firsthand, that it was someone with no mask in the panel room, nobody does anything. Someone stands for 15 seconds at the back of a room and they come up and tell you, please find a seat.
Mm-hmm.
But the facility staff, at least twice I heard them having very uncomfortable conversations with attendees who didn't have masks on at the door. And I never saw them let anybody in. I saw them stop and be like, you need a mask. You need a mask to come in. And someone's like, well, what, do you have masks in there? And you need to come back with a mask. And I heard people getting annoyed that they couldn't get in on, I think, 2 separate times. So that was good.
Interesting.
Those are hired staff of the convention center, right? Yeah. And the private, security, that sort of thing. But never the con staff.
I didn't see con staff. Yeah, it was facility staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is my issue, is that I feel like Otakon should have been far more aggressive about this than they were.
Yeah, luckily, I think the people there, by and large, I would say 98, 99% of people that, maybe even higher, were taking it seriously, wearing the masks, not even taking them off, even for cosplay
people incorporated them into cosplays and stuff, which was cool.
Yeah, they changed the rules on that about a week or two before the con started. The rule was you can take your mask off if you're posing for a cosplay photo or if you're conducting a panel.
And that's what they said ahead of time. And then very shortly after, they said, no, keep your mask on the whole time.
It's fine.
They sort of... Yeah. I'm fine with that. I feel like, maybe to get that word out, maybe they could have taken advantage of all these digital signs and stuff like that. Because as far as the enforcement of things, there were signs fairly frequently of hey, wear a mask. But I would say these were the most ignored signs of the convention. Because, for example, there's a sign in front of the elevator to say, hey, limit to 2 people in the elevator at a time or 1 family. Listen.
Oh, yeah. People definitely did not.
There was absolutely
no distancing.
Yeah, absolute zero compliance to social distancing. And a lot of people, like the Oticon staffers and stuff, would get very defensive if you pointed this out. And they say, well, yeah, because there's no attendance cap. Okay, why is there no attendance cap?
That's your problem. That's their problem.
Right. And so people were saying hey, there are concerns, especially in the hallways, the dealer's room, anywhere where there's a line, anywhere in panel rooms, no distancing anywhere for the entire convention. And they were saying, well, if we were to spread out chairs, then there would be 15% capacity in the rooms and, okay. And
yeah, that's fine. Just have people not go to the panels.
I remember, on Saturday night, Evan and I were walking around and we wanted to go to some panels, and we would look in on a panel room and it would be packed. And we just
didn't feel safe to go in.
We're not going in there.
And in fact, not only did the staff not enforce distancing to the point about fire code.
They discouraged distancing.
Yeah, you would walk into a room and obviously I understand standing in the back, whatever, it's fire hazard, legally they can't do it, right? But instead of being sorry, maybe you should leave or whatever, which is what I would end up doing, they would be doing as if kind of on autopilot. And I'm not really hating on an individual staff here. This is a training issue, right? But they would just do what they would normally do at an anime con, which is say, there's a seat right here. I found one squashed in there. So how about you get in there, right? And would be encouraging people to sit right next to other people smashed in together, which is, like I said, that's just the way everybody does it at anime cons. So it kind of just felt in general, all these policies were just set in stone from the previous year.
Right.
There was no distancing rules because distancing rules would have required an entirely new set of crowd control rules that they would have needed to come up with in that 2-month period.
I appreciate that they did have some of the panels also streaming on Twitch.
Yeah, that was
great. Really good.
Yeah, and like I feel like a thing to say, like if there's a problem with the capacity due to the social distancing, have more of those panels streaming. And even if you want to say like, well, we don't want people to like be able to basically go to the con without paying, like I know that there's ways to like have like subscriber only or member only or whatever thing, so have it be like member only or whatever. Or I mean, even then it's like you'd still have to pay to like actually be there to see things, go to the dealer's room and do all this other stuff. So I mean, I feel like if they were concerned about capacity with having social distancing, they probably could have used an expanded version of that streaming to try and have people be able to see the panels, even if the rooms were full at lower capacity. But
my hope is that they see that as proof of concept and they expand it in future years. Because I know historically that it's very hard to get reliable internet in a convention center, especially, you know, one with that many people quality, and streaming quality and so on and so forth, which on that note, I would like to give a public service announcement. If you are running a panel, don't rely on convention Wi-Fi to present your material. I saw on multiple occasions people trying to pull up YouTube, people trying to pull up Google Drive and try to sync their presentation in real time.
No way.
The YouTube video won't load.
People failing
in
at
the year of our Lord 2021.
I know.
There were people trying to pull their PowerPoint and the images wouldn't load and they only get the text. There was a lot of that going on at this convention, and I want it to be just understood by whoever can hear our voice. Please run your panel locally off of your own PC or whatever device it is that you have brought, because you cannot rely.
You can't depend on the internet.
No, one guy did luck out, and apparently, like, he went into his room and queued up the video and let the, like, he went to, like, Crunchyroll or wherever it was and let it buffer, and then he went in and he switched over to it and played from it, and it worked. And I was like, well, you got the anti-Kaiji luck right there, because that shit never works for me.
Yeah.
You may want to listen to the Speakeasy podcast from Alan and Kate, the Reverse Thieves, because I think they are considering doing a how to run an anime convention panel in the year 2021 sort of
that would be nice,
tutorial. I don't know if they will actually commit to that, but now that I've said it, they have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of those people it's their first time running a panel.
I went to a panel on, I think, Saturday morning or maybe Sunday morning that was being streamed, that this was one of the guests. This was actually a Japanese guest.
This is a great idea that they were able to sort of work around the regional like lockdown for travel.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
I forgot the guest name, but it was a fashion panel. Whichever guest was like the fashion guest. I mean, the best way that they could do this was to have them pipe in through, I don't know what the service was. Everybody says Zoom, but, you know, there's a million services, but it was something like that. Yeah,
colloquially, it's some video conferencing tool a la Edward Snowden, you know, coming to you from some remote location is these people.
They should have had Edward Snowden, by the way.
Yes, I mean, he was in that Loop on the Third special.
I mean, it was dicey, and there were times when it would drop out, but it worked. Again, I don't know if
you're at the mercy of connection quality in a convention facility, and that's the risk.
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple panels that we saw that were entirely just, my plan is to walk in here and just pull stuff up on YouTube.
Yeah,
like that's.
Okay. I mean, I suppose if it's the con or a guest, they could have a hotspot like that they purchased.
Maybe. Possibly.
Not have the convention center Wi-Fi.
I was going to say, I will make one exception for this, and I think it might have been Shigeto Koyama who like did this once. And if you're a Japanese guest, I'll just say you're allowed to do it. I'm not gonna be annoyed about it.
Yeah, I'm talking about fan panels as opposed to like guests who aren't really. They're just gonna show up and do whatever. Right. People are there to see them as opposed to what it is that they've got, generally speaking. But that was just my PSA.
But I would say overall the panels were still good.
Oh, yeah. I was surprised that they still got such a robust set of panels. I saw quite a lot of good stuff, including, as usual, for Otakon, stuff from people who I didn't know that was still pretty good.
Yeah. It's always nice to have, like, people, really good panels. It's like, I don't know this person. I've never seen them do a panel before.
I mean, multiple people that we know did cancel.
Yeah, a lot of people we personally knew said, "Oh, I'm not going this year," but they still filled up all those
Which
panel
turns
slots.
out to be the right call.
Yeah, I mean, it turned. If I was able to, I would have probably done the same. But at the same time, I had applied to do panels. I was accepted. I had applied to do press. I was accepted, and I said, "Okay, if I bail, they're not giving me these things again."
That's hold on. We need to own this, okay? We need to own the fact that we decided to go.
Well, but that's the reason why I decided to go.
But they're not going to do that on a pandemic.
I don't know that.
Who bailed as well, who had the same things, who had the same level. Like, I'm not going to buy that. I think we just have to own the fact that we can't make excuses about this. We made the choice. We could have not gone.
That is my legitimate reason. Is if I don't go, I'll never get another interview.
Agree with Gerald.
If you think they're merciful, then that's on you. But I'm pretty sure that cons are jerks.
Nah, I kind of agree with Gerald, especially just like knowing. I mean, I don't know about panels because I don't know a lot of the people running panels personally. But press, I mean. The press department at Otakon, I think, like knows who is good.
Yeah, I think the press department is probably fine.
They're pretty good.
But panels department changes every single year, and the likelihood that there's veteran department staffers who know me and will cut me a break for canceling, that's actually remote.
And yeah, I mean, I feel like when you're in the situation we're in, it's like you kind of have to understand that people are gonna.
Yeah. Panels is weird though. I do gotta say the panels department is weird at Otakon, and
it also turns
I don't
over
know
a
exactly
lot.
Who's running it year to year. I think maybe they have a lot of turnover, so I'm never quite sure how to predict what they're gonna accept or not. So that it's possible they might have, somebody there might say, this person canceled.
There's at least one that was on the schedule where they either no-showed or whatever, and they said that person's not coming back ever again. And that was like the Con Horror Stories or something like that.
I believe that is a case of some guy who didn't say ahead, I'm canceling.
I just don't know, I don't really know what their policy was in that because of the fact that we're in the situation we're in, whether they're relaxing that or not. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if they've said anything about it or not. Yeah,
it was a weird
after the fact, all around. But let's talk about some of the things that we went to that we liked.
The thing is, the first 2 slots of the convention were panels for us. I mean, panels that we, in some way, were conducting. 9 a.m.
I was I don't know if we wanted to go, in, chronological order and then, all go, or if we wanted to take turns
I'm not going in chronological order. I'm just bringing up the fact that the first couple of hours of the con were literally Daryl's panel at 9 a.m., and then our panel at 10:30.
I'm so sorry that they scheduled you so early, Daryl. Did you at least have a decent number of people?
Yes, that was the thing, because my concern was that the doors would open at 9 a.m. and my panel would be at 9 a.m., which was my impression from looking at other things. But as it turns out, on Friday only, the doors open at 8 a.m. And so there were people there. It was a pretty good turnout. That was I was going to be my concern, there's a bad time slot. And you can look at the pictures that people took. It's okay, no, there's not really any bad time slot. And so, yes, people did show up, but it did demonstrate that there was still some cross signals regarding getting the word out. Because when we picked up our panel badge, we asked, hey, the website says this about mask when you're on stage. Do you have to keep a mask on the whole time? Or do you have to take it off for people to interpret if they're hard of hearing? And one person at the table said, keep your mask on. And the other person overrode them and said, no, take your mask off. You're the only person presenting. So that's what I did. I was hesitant to do it, but I was okay, well, this is what the rule is. About, I would say 5 minutes in, a staffer walks up and says, you have to put your mask on. And so I put everything back on, and I forgot that I also had a face shield, and face shields don't carry audio through a microphone. And so for a while I was talking and no one could hear me. Not that long, maybe 45 seconds or something. And then the panel after me, they said, oh, take your mask off. And then they took their mask off and they were fine. And so there was a lot of people who did panels who didn't have a mask on because that was
what they were told.
So I guess they were told that they were following directions. They weren't sticking it to the man.
Sure.
Just in my case, I was oh, well, if it's an accessibility thing, then fine, I'll do it. But no, there was the emails that went out to everyone said one set of instructions. Then some of the people in the room had another set of instructions, and then that got maybe worked out, I would say, partway through day 1.
Yeah, it's classic anime con problems where the policies are not communicated down to the individual staffers and they just have to make a judgment call.
Right. It's unfortunate. It should have been very, very clear to everybody there, keep your mask on all the time. This is the new rule. This is what we're saying.
Now, luckily, because it's Otakon, I had no tech problems whatsoever. Sound worked fine, video worked fine, screens were placed perfectly. There was no trouble with people being able to not see subtitles or anything like that you may typically see at other conventions from an AV standpoint.
I think the panels I went to, the only issues I recall were some of those things where people couldn't get stuff to load because of the internet.
Right, but that's not the convention or the venue or like
no. I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm just saying like, that was like the only thing in any of the ones that I went to, and exactly like that's not a con issue. Like, so things seem to be going really smoothly.
The only con issue I would say was there is that there was like at least 8 panels devoted to Mobile Suit Gundam. Some of which were
oh my god!
Which is like, I get that
every time with this.
I don't think I wound up going to any of them. Unfortunately,
I don't think I did either.
I went to one of them that was indirectly a Mobile Suit Gundam panel because it was about Yoshikazu Yasuhiko.
Okay,
and so
I went to that. Yeah,
and that was a very good panel, but it was sparsely attended because if you don't know who Yoshikazu Yasuhiko is, then you're unlikely to show up. It's just like with any Japanese guest.
I wish I had caught that one.
Really good presentation.
It referred to him as Yas, which is like, that's like you already know. If you know who that is, then you already know like half of the content of the panel.
Sure.
Right.
And it was opposite a Gundam panel. If you are doing to the Yoshikazu Yasuhiko panel or the Gundam panel that's happening at the same time. And it's not, and the excuse they would traditionally give for that whenever they do it in the past was, oh, well, if one fills up, you go to the other one. But I mean, Gerald, I know you were concerned about this too with your panel on Friday night, where you were doing the history of hentai in English, and it was preceded immediately in the same room by history of hentai in the 90s?
It was hentai through the ages of the 90s. So I looked at this and I was like, my panel is going to cover the same ground, at least theoretically, that this panel is going to. Why would you put them back to back? Why wouldn't you put them at least on different days?
Did you watch that one?
Yes, I did.
Was there a lot of overlap?
Not as much as I thought.
Okay, good.
But it was attempting to be a real panel. It was not attempting to be what these hentai panels usually are, which is a bunch of drunk guys get up there and start to MST3K stuff.
Which, I mean, I guess people like it and go to it, so whatever. But
yeah, but my approach is just, I'm running a regular panel, just it's got material in it that I can't show during the day, so I have to put it at night.
I was very uncertain about what the 18 plus cutoff at this convention was, and apparently so were a lot of other people, because this was a convention where you needed, for one, because the con was shutting down at midnight rather than 2 a.m. because they need to sterilize the facility, they need to allot that extra time. There was a lot of 18 plus stuff starting at 6 p.m. And a lot of the things that were marked as 18 plus are things that were like very popular with teenagers. Like you had to get an 18 plus wristband to watch Osumatsu-san in the video room.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Wait, what?
That is on the schedule.
Go look on the schedule.
As 18 plus.
It's marked as 18 plus, and there were
a
lot
weird.
of other things.
What happens in Osamatsu-san that I didn't finish that show? What happens that would warrant that?
There's a lot of penetration later in the show, so.
No, well, these are the first couple episodes.
Like, maybe there were a couple episodes where there were some like vague cartoon dicks, but like not even really that I. But
these are the first couple episodes of the show that they were like, okay, and so I'm looking at it and I'm going down the list and I'm just trying to think like, obviously I'm the infamous person who got shut down because of showing,
I call it pulling a Daryl Surratt.
But here's the thing.
Yes.
In their application, they're like, if you're unsure of whether it's 18 plus, then it probably is. And in 2021, one of the most popular anime series among teenagers is Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba. Demon Slayer got a movie that came out in the theaters that was rated R. Solely for violence. There's no nudity. There's no like sexual content in it. There's not even really what I would consider gory violence. They just bleed in like fantasy quantities.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing my panel about like, here's the 30 years ago anime 1991, and there's like OAVs about fighting monsters, and when you shoot the monster, stab the monster, it bleeds. It's like, is this 18 plus? If Demon Slayer's 18 plus? By these
as established by the Daryl Surratt incident, it's not the blood and gore that does it. It's showing a single nipple.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That was my rationale. But then when I looked at other things that were marked 18 plus, there was no nudity in those other things that were marked wristband required.
Yeah, I feel like cons really need to lay out some kind of like
like
guidelines for what should be.
Yeah, Memories is 18 plus, and so I'm trying to figure out what is in Memories.
How is Memories 18 plus? Because there's people who get killed, but they're not killed in graphically gory ways. And yet it happens. Yeah. And so, but you needed a wristband to see Katsuhiro Otomo's Memories, which streamed on Twitch. They did the discotheque when they did this thing of that on the dub of that on Twitch. So is it like Twitch? You can't stream porn. You can't stream like things that are objectionable under that rule set. And so that made me like highly uncertain as far as what I could and couldn't show. What's more, there were screenings of things like Otaku no Video, where they've got like the interviews with like the otaku guys who are into like porn games, and Hideaki Anno's got his decensoring mosaic glasses on and stuff like that.
これですか? そうですね。自作したんですけどね。結構、モザイクとかも、消えて見えたりするんですけどね。
Did the screening of the remastered Project Echo from Discotheque.
Yes. And there's nudity in that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the crowd was half people who knew Project Echo, like seen it back in the day, and were just wowed at how great it was looking and stuff like that. And a large percentage of people there had never seen Project Echo in their lives. And a large percentage of people in there were younger viewers who, like, their parents did not know that there was going to be naked Biko boobs and panties and stuff like that in this cartoon.
That might be less cool.
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking slightly older, but if they're really young, then that's not
But that's the thing, is that you did not need a wristband to see Project Echo, even though, as Discotheque pointed out in their panel afterwards, this was something that when they originally sold it like CPM, they put contains nudity, not as a sticker, but like as part of like
under
the box
title.
Copy, under the title.
As a selling point.
Yeah, as a selling point. So it is inconsistent.
Because that was in the days of like anime is not for kids.
There's a scene in that, and people like they kind of groan, but that is what was said in for as many years as I can remember it. When Seiko gets abducted and she starts screaming, "Rape! I'm not. What are you talking about? I'm not going to do that. No, please don't rape me!" Like that's in the movie as the dialogue. And that is okay, I guess, for the standards of this, but not Mr. Osamatsu. So it was inconsistent what the content guidelines are. And so my comments to, if you have any doubt, then it probably is. It's like, I'm always going to have doubt when it's so inconsistently applied to the content.
Right,
here.
Exactly. I mean, my assumption would usually be like nudity, because Americans are weird about sex as opposed to violence.
Very weird.
Some stuff gets 18 plus for violence, but it's not usually like the case. It's usually sex people get weird about.
This sounds like these are just mistakes. Like, honestly, like, I'm sure somebody at Otakon is saying, maybe we should have made that Project Echo one 18 plus.
I don't know. Like, obviously, like they had live action movies and stuff in there too. And historically, they've run some pretty crazy stuff where you needed no wristband to see. This year, it seemed like some of the things that were like old samurai movies from the 50s or whatever that Animega had restored. It's like, you got to have your 18 plus wristband for this. So I feel like they were generally being more restrictive on that stuff just for violence, rather than like, because my standard was like, could I run this on TV? And I'm not talking about like deep cable, like Showtime or whatever. I'm saying like, can this run like on Cartoon Network? But it's like Cartoon Network runs JoJo's Bizarre Adventure uncut. So what the hell do I know?
I mean, they have Metalocalypse uncut, and that show is like half just gory scenes.
And so to me, I'm like, okay, I can do this stuff because, hey, Metalocalypse is fine, and Samurai Jack was fine, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, I'm surprised that the Demon Slayer movie would have gotten R for violence.
And that's like the most popular thing with kids is Demon Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Otakon, like, next year establish some guidelines.
Even for the panels, like, panel-wise, you'd see a lot of people casually curse at non-18 plus panels. Like SoccerCon, you'd need an 18 plus wristband so you could say shit. You still couldn't show.
Really?
Yes, you still can't show anything because that would be like too horrible over there. But you know, you can say shit, you know, or whatever if you've got your 18 plus wristband at SoccerCon. We went to panels where it was like, hey, Intro to Josei or whatever, where
oh yes, Sunday morning. Yes,
and incidentally, those panels were very good.
Yeah, the intro to Josei was great. I actually wrote down some notes from intro to Josei.
Oh, I missed that one. So I'm curious about it.
It was very funny. It was on Sunday morning, and she would just show scenes of a woman being penetrated Sunday morning
in a very Lady Kami approved way. Okay.
Yes, I've got pictures of it. I did write down some of the.
Really, Gerald?
I did. Yes. In fact, I have here. Miyaku Maki, complex age. I think I wrote down Midnight Secretary equals sexy underwear. Spell of desire.
Gerald taking the most important notes.
Oh yeah. He's Gerald's got a little notepad out. He's like, I'm taking notes very studiously.
Hold
here.
on, I've got the two best ones here. Spell of desire was my note for that was quote rapey.
That being the exact turn of phrase used by the panelists to describe it on Sunday morning.
And then pink. Prostitute with pet crocodile. I need to read that.
Oh, you haven't read Pink.
Yeah, I think
Pink is excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. That's Kyoko Okazaki.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So that was a real good panel, and there were some great panels. There were some not so great panels, which we might get to.
Yeah, but let's talk some more about the good ones, because I know, Clarissa, I know you liked the one for Ace Attorney on trial.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that seemed cool.
Yeah, that one was really good. I've never seen a panel, I don't think, by those two ladies. Unfortunately, I didn't catch they also did the Sword Lesbians panel, which I
wanted to see that.
What a good name for a panel.
They did the Beyond Persona panel as well.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the Ace Attorney one was very good because the knowledge of the Japanese justice system is obviously something that not a lot of people have. Luckily, one of the ladies who put the panel together is fluent in Japanese, and so there's also not necessarily a lot of stuff that's available in English, and so she was able to compile information that would only be accessible in Japanese. So that was super interesting.
Clarissa, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't lived in Japan. I don't speak fluent Japanese, but I played Phoenix Wright. I know how the Japanese justice system works.
Right.
You know, the thing is actually, it's surprisingly, I mean, not accurate, obviously it's exaggerated, but actually a lot more stuff is either accurate or an explicit commentary on stuff that is the case in the justice system.
Are all the judges like that? Where they just get convinced by everybody?
Well, so it is...
They're all like the Inferno cop judge, where they listen to the thing the last person said.
So that's a thing where it's exaggerated, but apparently it's kind of a commentary, because one of the things I did not know about the Japanese justice system is judges, they're not lawyers, so they don't require any legal training. It's purely an apprenticeship thing. And B, because until I think it was about 2009, they didn't have jury trials. The idea in the absence of so we have, when you have jury trials, that the jury is not supposed to have knowledge about it. So in the absence of the jury trials, the judge is not supposed to know anything about it beforehand.
That's why the judge is an idiot.
Yes.
In Phoenix Wright. Yeah.
So it's a combination of the judges have no actual legal background, and they're not supposed to know anything about the case beforehand. And so, obviously, hopefully, they're not as dumb as the judge.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things that's kind of an exaggeration.
I just know that in Asia in general, in Japan in particular, and China, 95 to 99% of all those trials are guilty.
And that's a thing in Japan, and obviously there's definitely concern about it and criticism. Part of that is because the prosecutors tend to only bring a case to court if they're pretty sure they can get a conviction. So if they're not fairly certain they'll get a guilty verdict, they probably won't even take it to court at all. They'll just kind of say, okay, whatever. So that's part of it, but but obviously, still, it is a thing that, yes, a huge proportion of the cases that actually do go to court are found guilty, and there's definitely lots of concern and argument within Japan about that.
So, Gerald, did you actually make it to this panel? I know you wanted to go. I don't know if you actually got in there or not. The genres of non-traditional idols.
No, I didn't get to go to that one. I wanted to. That one just sounded really neat because, those are the alternative idols, the punk idols and the metal idols and all of that.
Yeah.
I did not get to sit in on that one, unfortunately.
What was a good one that you went to?
The fashion one was very good as they were conducting it. Again, that one was difficult because the lady was in Japan and they were doing a conference through it, but the one person conducting it could speak fluent Japanese and could translate for her, and so that was quite a good panel, I thought.
Was it just like general Japanese fashion, or?
I came in late to the panel, but she was specifically a fashion designer, and she actually brought up the different brands that she was doing for different idol groups as well. Like, this idol group is meant more targeted towards girls, and so it's got, frillier fashion to it, while this one is girl groups targeted towards guys. And so it's got this sort of look for it. And so that one was pretty good, I thought. I went to the kit bashing panel. Unfortunately, I don't think it was a bad panel. I think it was very good, but it needed to be more basic for me because this guy started with like, okay, here's my armature.
He's like, okay, well, I've already built my bipedal wireframe skeleton armature.
Here's the armature already, so let me start like building and attaching parts to it. And I'm like, you need to start from how did you get this armature?
Right. Well, it's like, okay,
I was in there for a little bit because I couldn't get into other panels.
Yeah, I caught the beginning before I left for another panel.
Yeah.
And I couldn't exactly make much sense of it, so I just like played the World Ends With You demo on my Switch instead. It was just like he was just kind of like talking absentmindedly about what he was doing.
Yeah,
it's sort of like the old how to draw things, like draw a square, draw a circle. Okay, now draw
the rest of the fucking owl.
Now draw the rest of the fucking horse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So I'm not going to say it was a bad panel. I just think that it could have been more basic. Like, I think that the guy who conducting it was so good at this stuff that it doesn't occur to him
that even this is more than knowledge that a typical model kit builder might have.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was kind of workshop-y as opposed to, I guess it was literally a workshop, but it was like, I was kind of hoping it was going to be, I guess the title didn't imply this, but I was like, oh, cool, a panel about kit bashing, like the history of that or something. But it was just like a guy kit bashing live on stage.
Like, here's some things I do. Yeah, it was more workshop related, but it was in a panel setup. But they did have like a camera that was feeding in so that people could see like a close up of what was going on the stage.
So from that perspective, it was great. Yeah.
One of the good panels that I saw was actually on Twitch. So a lot of people saw this panel because all the ones that were on Twitch, they just had one room that was wired up, and they just, whatever was in that room went onto Twitch. But it was the Japonism, history of the first Japanese culture craze in the 19th century.
Oh, yes. I wanted to see that.
That one was good.
That one was good. Yes.
It was very good. The guy running it was like an art historian or something like that. Like a guy in he had like some sort of museum art sort of background. And he really went through and talked about like, here's all these famous artists that you have heard about in the 19th century and what have you. And here's like what the appeal is of Japan and how they treated it and how they viewed it as like this sort of novelty. And they take their pictures with like colonial appropriation or whatever, appropriation and all that stuff, like, Van Gogh and what have you. Lots of things of like, hey, here's what the original Japanese, movement was going to be all about. He had like lots of funny examples of things that people were making and maybe some stuff that went back and forth.
Well, my favorite one was he showed a set of these paintings by the same artist that were titled, and
was it the like women looking at Japanese objects?
Women appearing at Japanese.
Women remarking on Japanese objects.
Right.
Oh, the original YouTube reaction videos.
Yes.
Yeah, like I remember those paintings, but I'm really bad with remembering.
I think my favorite was the the Japanese women hanging out with the white guys with the very suggestively held giant sake bottle for a dick to show that even back then they're taking out stealing their women. But
I call this work looking for a Japanese girlfriend.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I was glad that there was a panel on that because it's a super interesting thing. And actually, like the whole cultural interchange between Japan and Europe and particularly England in that time period was really interesting.
That one was really good.
One of the things I'm kind of aware of in that history that's interesting that like parallels nowadays is that there's like entire movements. I'm sure they talked about this in Western art. I think particularly around like things that kind of got away from representational art that are like directly inspired by Japanese art. And it's such a parallel to like the way that like animation here has now started to look more and more like anime.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that one was really good, and you should be able to watch that still because Otakon was smart, and they
they on VOD?
They saved the VODs for these panels.
Oh, good.
That's good.
Twitch VODs, even if you save them, they still only last for so long. Like, my guess is they probably, even though they were smart enough to tick the box, there probably is not someone who's going to go and make a clip and save it so that it never deletes. Mm-hmm. So you may want to go and watch those now or download them now if you're savvy enough to know how to download things off of Twitch.
Are we really going to get this episode out in time?
Yes, because it's not like it's going to take the amount of time it takes before Twitch takes down, unless they manually delete it.
No, hopefully not. But yes.
It'll be well before the window of when Twitch would auto-delete those clips. But yeah, that would be on Friday.
Evan, what about you? What panels did you go to?
Probably one of my favorites was that Yaz panel that Daryl mentioned, which I wanted to shout out the panelist, which is Brainchild129 on Twitter. One of the other ones I liked was also an old anime panel. There was a Dirty Pair panel, which I was pretty happy about.
I wish I could have gone to that. That was against mine.
It was fun. It wasn't like a lot of new information for me, and I kind of wonder whether it was new information for most of the audience, because it did seem like a lot of people who
fans
were already Dirty Pair fans.
Right, very much like the Mecha panel phenomenon.
Yeah. It was the sort of panel that, if there were new fans in there, I think it was a good introduction. They had clips, some really good kind of highlights from each show, including they showed a clip that got me actually interested in watching Dirty Pair Flash, which I have otherwise been told is not worth my time. That was fun. I was just happy to see Dirty Pair representation,
Nice. Yeah.
Do a Golf Force panel, Gerald.
I would love to for the 3 people who will show up to it.
That's right.
You can show off all the weird Galforce merch you've purchased.
Yeah, I think I might own all of it that exists because you can for something that small. But
yeah,
maybe I'll do that.
Did anybody go to the because I didn't go to the con on Sunday. Did anybody go to the naval history?
No, that was on my list.
Panel. It's 2:00 on Sunday.
Yeah, I think around that time we were leaving.
Yeah.
There were a lot of panels that I missed because of the thing that Gerald mentioned. They were too popular. They were too full. So, for example, I think I'm surprised we haven't mentioned this yet. Did anybody go to Saturday Morning MILFs?
So I deliberately was not going to call out ones for people run by people we personally knew. I was the ones I was picking as my examples of good ones were things I hadn't seen before. Saturday Morning MILFs was run by Carl from Ogioi Maniacs, and it was actually opposite Gerald's panel for History of Hentai in English.
Oh, that's right.
And so I was not able to go, but I understand it was a quite packed house, so I did not see it myself.
I also missed it.
Carl is such a subdued guy.
That's what makes it funny. That's why I really wanted to go.
I wanted to go and see him say this is a check out the mommy milkers on her.
Right. Yeah. He's subdued until it's blogging time where he's like, okay, I'm finally able to see Project Eiko because I've never actually seen it after all these years. It's not that great. That's basically the gist of his blog post is that, maybe if I'd seen it back when most other people had seen it in the 90s when this was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before as anime, it might have had a bigger impact on him, but he respected just how cut loosing they were on the animation side of things.
I will counter that by saying that I watched it when I was in college, which is long after it came out. And I was like, hey, this is cool. So,
and I'll counter that by saying I watched it with someone who had never seen it until that night, and they thought it was great. Yeah,
she was my age roughly, and she just heard about it and was told it wasn't that good, but then she finally saw it and she's like, oh no, this is so dumb, but I love it. So there was a lot of people who saw it for the first time there and liked it quite a bit. But maybe if you're not as much of a Saturday morning MILF hunter as Carl, maybe it doesn't have the same pizzazz to it as other
not
things.
enough
it is low on MILFs.
Project
That's
Eiko,
true.
Yeah.
It's just Creamy Mommy as the teacher, the only adult lady who you can tell.
That's a grade A MILF, but still, it's only the one.
Right. That was, from what I hear, a good panel. A lot of the panels I heard were maybe things where people had too much material and needed to cut it down a little better, which always a good always a good policy to have more material than you have time. For example, there was a panel, this very daunting topic, a Kunihiko Ikuhara panel.
Oof.
And that's very intimidating, but I didn't go through to most of it myself. I kind of heard the testimony, but they opened by saying, yeah, we normally do 2.5 hours for this panel.
2.5 hours. Oh my
what
God.
con gives you 2.5 hours?
just watch Utena
1
instead.
hour. But here's the thing. They spent so much time talking about like their examples. It's not like the examples are bad or anything like that, but it's like, you got to be checking your clock and realizing it's like, okay,
yeah,
you're this much in and you don't need to give like 5 examples of every single time this happens in Utena. Say this happens, give 1 example, then go to the next show, because otherwise you're going to run out of time. That's basically what happened to him on that one, where they kind of just have to fly through things to the point where it's like, all right, yeah, you talked about it, but I don't feel like I understood. Like, I happen to have seen these shows, but I mean, if I weren't able to fill in the blanks, it would kind of be almost nonsensical. And it's not that they didn't know their stuff. It's just some of these things you may have to time out a little better ahead of time to make sure you can spend enough time on each of these things. Like, it's not just a Utena panel.
Especially if you're having to cut down from a longer panel to a shorter one. I think there were a couple, obviously for the people that I don't already know who did panels, I don't necessarily know like what their history with doing panels are, but I think sometimes there's ones that like are not bad panels and they have interesting information, but it might have been the first panel they had done. So they, were maybe kind of nervous or didn't quite like have the rhythm of it down.
Plus, we're all kind of out of practice
fine.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did see in terms of ones that are kind of like needs improvement, but it's a good baseline. Like I saw a Metroid panel because I've been playing through the 2D Metroid games lately, and I generally liked it because like I don't know that much about Metroid, so it was like, okay, I like learning a little bit about some of the games. But that was one where like my main feedback to the panelists would just be like, it was one of those where they're kind of giving a very basic overview of like, and then this game came out, right? And like what makes a panel like that kind of like above and beyond is like what we saw in like the Yaz panel, right? Where it's like you really get like as much history as you can put together and like form a through line through it. But they did dig into like a lot of Metroid stuff. They were talking about the manga and like all the different kind of canon or less than canon stuff. So it just needed more of like more detail to kind of tie it all together.
Right. And that's always a challenging thing with any kind of history is like being able to kind of find that narrative and create it. Like I enjoyed the Megalobox panel. There was definitely some interesting information in there. That was another one that it's like, I think probably there could be improvements to it. I think having more video clips would have probably been good. And I think, again, like, I don't know if this was like the first panel that this lady had done, but she seemed kind of nervous. But it was a good, like, it had good information in it. And so I think definitely, like, I'm glad I went to it.
Did anybody go to the Shinzo Abe Legacy? Because I really wanted to go to the Shinzo Abe Legacy. Because, like, what a title.
No.
I was hoping that one, like, would be everything I dreamed, when we make these Shinzo Abe jokes.
Packed house, like all the Shinzo Abe fans turned up.
If only we had the VOD for that one.
A lot of these are, like, interesting potential topics. We have to give the shit to the one panel that Gerald and I went to because it's got like, the easiest topic in the world, but the most
it's made me so
botched
angry.
execution. This panel, I'm going to read the description of it. You can kind of get an idea in your head of what this panel would theoretically be. The title of it is Your Anime is an 80s Movie. This was done on Saturday night.
Oh, this one looked good.
And it says, here's
based on the premise.
Yeah, here's the premise. It's like, have you ever watched an anime that felt familiar? Which came first, Blade Runner or Akira? Is Appleseed just RoboCop the anime? Why does every John Carpenter flick feel like an anime movie? Maybe because it is. Find out which anime you love is just a movie with bad hair and great style from the 80s and vice versa. Okay, cool. You could easily do panels about, hey, here's the anime and here's the 80s movie that it was pulling from.
You could do like a whole panel on Streets of Fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That one alone. The problem with this one was that at least one of the guys was definitely a YouTuber. And he definitely thought he was the funniest motherfucker on the planet.
No.
It was awful.
That was one issue with it. Obviously, I think he might have had like some, and this doesn't really factor into the panel either way, but like the jokes that he was cracking maybe weren't like as effective as he thought they were.
You thought they were?
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But the main issue with it was they'd run something and then the corresponding thing that they would show would be like this sort of left field, like, really? That's your comparison point? For example, they showed the trailer to Blade Runner.
for you two guys, for both of you guys, if you were going to show an anime that corresponded to Blade Runner, what comes to mind?
Bubblegum Crisis.
I mean, yeah,
Bubblegum Crisis is kind
Bubblegum
of
Crisis.
the most obvious pick.
Yeah.
What these guys picked was not Bubblegum Crisis, and okay,
I mean, Bubblegum Crisis has references to Blade Runner.
It has visual references, etc. And they said, okay, we're not going to pick Bubblegum Crisis. They picked something that could be argued as more thematically in line with it. They picked Armitage the Third.
Oh, yeah, you tweeted about this.
Specifically, Armitage the Third Polymatrix.
I mean, I guess, but like...
in the sense that all of the cyberpunk was inspired by Blade Runner in some form, right?
Yeah, like...
Or like there are like androids.
Right.
You have to like pull it so far. Meanwhile, like the literal like building in Blade Runner is in Bubblegum Crisis.
Right.
Pris and the replicants.
Right.
Come on.
Right, yeah.
And she dresses up like Pris from Blade Runner. This shot is straight out of Blade Runner, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's low-hanging fruit, and they kind of went for a weird reach to get that. Then they said, okay, here's another one, RoboCop. And they said, okay, well, the corresponding one for this is the CG Appleseed movie from Shinji Aramaki.
Did it just seem like maybe they didn't know older anime?
I would actually believe that. I would believe that they had not watched anything. I believe that they had
when
watched...
the Blade Runner one happened.
How do you watch like Armitage the Third, but you don't know enough about Bubblegum Crisis to put it in?
Well, that's what I mean is like, have they just like not watched anything pre like 90s? Like that's what I'm wondering. Or were they trying to like not pick the obvious thing? Yeah.
I thought that might have been the case, but one guy, and typically I am against the guy in the crowd who shouts back at the presenters approach. But when the Blade Runner one happened, one guy was like, have you seen Bubblegum Crisis? Like out of disbelief. And it was not me, and it was not Gerald. It was some other guy on the other side of the room. And they said
about to.
And they said, yeah, we saw it, but we didn't think that it was like the best choice. That was the response that they gave. Then when they gave the Appleseed one, I was like, okay, you could defend this by saying, okay, Dune and Nude is very similar to Lewis in RoboCop and Murphy and Briario, whatever. That is not the approach.
But like thematically, they're not.
Right. There's no
nothing
like,
alike.
you know, Frankenstein monster thematics or like that. So yeah, you could hypothetically defend Appleseed to RoboCop, but thematically they don't really match, and their justification was they're cops and they shoot everything.
Right.
That's why it's
really bullshit. And it's like, it was like the easiest layout for a panel you could ever have, and yet they botched it in such and
a good concept, right? Like it's a way of like connecting stuff that people know to things they might not know.
It's just so bad.
Yeah, like that's a good panel idea.
It's just so bad that next year, expect a panel like that done by Daryl and me, because this is how we do things, is out of spite.
The spite. So, yeah, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I would necessarily go that far, but yes, they're probably going to happen
Am I excluded from the 80s movie
panel?
Know,
you can absolutely
I don't know if I was committing to that myself, but Gerald is certain that he is doing this panel.
I'm absolutely doing it. If you want to be on it, Clarissa, I would love you to be on it, because I know you know your shit. And so these guys, I was just so like, and I'm good if they want to go like the non-obvious route, but make me...
But at least back it up with a rationale that's decent.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that's like, oh, and it's like this because there's robots, or it's like this because... I don't think, to me,
they shoot
the big
stuff,
thematic thing of Blade Runner is needing to hunt down, like the act of being a Blade Runner is maybe not the most important part of Blade Runner.
No.
Yeah, honestly, the guys you described running it sounds similar to the guys I saw. Actually, Gerald, we went together.
Jesus.
Are they the same guys who ran the censorship in anime season 2 rated E for Everything's Wrong panel?
God damn, you brought that back up. I thought I'd wiped that from my memory. This was a panel that...
was it the same people?
It might have been. I don't remember, but it might have been.
It's the same vibe. Just described.
Evan and I were kind of wandering around looking for a panel that we could get into that wasn't crowded, and we found that panel all about censorship in anime, and these guys were dropping some lines that...
I mean, that sounds like a recipe for like, you know, weird Gamergate dudes.
I know, right?
Yes.
We were sort of like taking bets on whether it was going to be an Anime Gate panel.
Countdown to Vagina Bones.
I think they maybe... Did they mention that?
They started talking about like alphabet people, and Evan and I looked at each other and were like, this is not good.
Yeah, there were a few tells that was like, are they like kind of... Yeah.
And there was some of that in the Your Life as an 80s Anime thing too. Like the one guy, he would drop some, not exactly like right wing, but like sort of like slightly like a flag, in this phrasing.
Like sort of internet edgelord stuff that at this point is basically just a flag for being a right wing shithead.
Yeah, like it's not like outright.
Maybe they weren't full like Nazis, but like maybe,
Yeah, maybe they just grew up in that sort of humor circle. But point being, there were like some things where it's like you take that chance where you don't know who's running it, and so you try to like see like, okay, well maybe luckily this year we saw a few where hey, I never saw this person before, but it's great.
Yes.
And that outweighed the, hey, this has potential and these guys just are bad. Yeah.
The weird thing about this censorship one is that they weren't actually talking about censorship in many cases, or when they were, they would be talking about like, what were they talking about? Brynhilde and the Darkness.
They were talking about like the...
Was it just stuff like, they made Tifa's boobs smaller in like the FF7 remake?
That would have been a more clear tell if they were doing kind of Gamergate censorship stuff.
It wasn't censorship. It was more like, okay, this was how it aired on TV. This is the Blu-ray version.
Right, it's the TV version. I mean, that is censorship, I would say.
I mean, I guess sort of, yeah.
It's like self-censorship, yeah.
It's pulling very hard when it's not like real, like you can't get this any other way sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also just, it was clearly shows they watched that they were like, lol, isn't this funny? Right? Like, as opposed to a history of censorship in anime or anything like that. Like, my favorite tell for someone who doesn't know what they're talking about is they kept referring to the people doing the censoring as they. They censored this, and it's like, who is doing the censoring? So they said, like, for Brynhilde and the Darkness, they censored these shots, and in that case, who's censoring it is, I believe, the Japanese production studio. But then they moved on to talk about Card Captors, the US version of Card Captor Sakura, which I don't even know if that counts as censorship. It's just the reversioning of it that changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
content,
like a fucked up adaptation,
right?
but
and they talked about Warriors of the Wind, and in both cases, they also just said they censored it. And it's like, well, who's doing the censoring here?
Yeah, like that's
it might have been the same
weird.
people. It was two guys, and they were throwing out weird jokes that weren't funny.
Oh, they had bits. They had bits and goofs on stage that did not land, where it was like one guy, it seemed like a script, like he was setting the other guy up to say something. It was completely unfunny.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like there are so many like versions of stuff where like there were things that were censored to run on like US TV, like when they'd like paint the bikinis over people in Tenchi Muyo, or like,
I mean, if you want to really do a panel that nobody but us cares about, you could even talk about like pre-war anime censorship.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't think these guys had that breadth of knowledge. It was just very like basic
probably not.
stuff.
Yeah, I usually try to give people benefit of the doubt, but like I said, we were getting some red flag vibes.
Yeah, we passed some eyes
stuff
back and forth between us a lot, and we're like, how much more do we give it?
Oof.
But yeah, like apparently, as I'm looking through it, my understanding is even though there was like 8 Gundam panels on the schedule, apparently 5 of them were by the same people.
What?
Huh.
There was some like very large amount of like, they just did a bunch of Gundam panels and they all apparently got approved, which is a recurring theme.
How do you accept 5 Gundam panels, but you don't accept the Strungle Galvian Power Hour by Tom Aznavour and Pats? Yeah.
Well, Pats at least got to do his panel with Ed Chavez about Kentaro Miura, which... It's Ed Chavez talking about manga. It's going to be good, even if he just literally shows up and, has a very minimal visual presentation, because what they're saying is generally solid enough. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that panel went fine. Of course, everyone showed up because it's Kentaro Miura and he just passed away.
Yeah.
That's when I had to leave because it was too crowded, which is good for them packing the room, but not good for me.
And they did, I guess, at the convention, or roughly like very shortly, they announced that there is going to be at least one additional chapter of Berserk that his assistants will complete that's about to come out. And it's going to have like tribute sketches and stuff from a bunch of people and things like that. And so
that's good.
Yeah, that panel was good, even though Pats definitely did not like the little 1-volume self-contained things that Miura illustrated for Buronson that Dark Horse put out. King of Wolves and especially Japan. Pats really hated Japan, which is it's not a very good comic. I'm not going to lie, but
I haven't read those.
It's because they're lesser works, but certainly I thought they did a good job, not just talking about Berserk only, but here's the other stuff that Kentaro Miura did over the years. And of course, there's no way Ed Chavez talking about manga is going to be bad.
Yeah.
So, that one was another highlight. Unfortunately, though, no Galvion Shrungle discussion.
That's right. You couldn't sneak it in there.
Oh, I was going to say I didn't go to it because I think it was just the same one that had been done online previously, but I saw that they had the Know What Anime Fan Wants panel.
Yeah, I did go to that, even though I went to the online one.
He refined it a little bit from based on the feedback we threw at him on the chat during the anime lockdown. So he appended to it, but we were unable to go ourselves because we had a flight to catch. Okay. So how did it go, Evan?
It was really good. It was a lot like the online one. I didn't notice a ton of huge differences, but I think he mentioned a few places where he added in corrections and stuff. That was run by George Horvath, Land of Obscusion on Twitter.
Yeah, we saw all the people on Twitter that we typically didn't get to see much. Everyone was piling into that room, but we were we got to get on the train.
Oh, right. Yeah, we were talking outside the room, I remember.
Right.
It's really good. It's basically all about companies that I think they're all defunct.
Yes.
And it's,
I think so, yeah.
That tried to release anime in the U.S. and
failed in one way or another.
In some form.
Very spectacularly.
Of which there is a shocking amount more than you might think.
I know, there were ones in there that I'm I don't think I've ever heard of this company.
Yeah.
There were definitely a few of those.
It's a really good setup for a panel where it's like watching a train wreck, right?
Yeah.
You just get to watch him describe each of these unique kinds of failures.
Right.
I think I had to leave. I think I left partway through because it was getting too crowded for me. But I did see the full panel in the streaming version. And I remember, I think the last one he talked about, I forget the name of them, but it's the company that was the guy, I forget what he was doing. Don't
use
with
your
his,
student loans.
The student loans.
For licensing anime.
And then also that guy got in trouble because he broke his parole by going to an anime convention.
That's right.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh
Don't do sex crimes with underage kids and then go to anime convention with underage kids and then be in violation of your parole. The whole thing was that one was tremendous.
That might have been the peak.
It's a good reminder that I just had a brain fart. What was the anime streaming site that we just had happen? Anime.
The definitely real Kickstarter?
Yeah. AnimeTube?
Say it again, Gerald.
AnimeTube.
AnimeTube. The same energy as AnimeTube. I felt like it was kind of in simpatico with that, where it's just watch that happen, and it's there's a long history of people doing exactly this kind of stuff in the home video market.
Yeah.
If anybody has any last words about panels...
I do. I wanted to shout out the most amazing programming decision on this schedule, which I'm surprised nobody else brought up on Twitter or anywhere. Otakon accepted 2 panels, one called Real Life in Anime at 12:45 p.m. on Friday, and another at 2 p.m. on Friday called The Real Life of Anime.
Ooh.
There's a 15-minute gap between them. That's it. They're right next to each other on the schedule.
Oh my gosh.
And I checked. They have different descriptions. It was not a typo. And the descriptions are describing slightly different interpretations of that nearly identical title.
Ooh.
Wow. Yeah,
as far as the schedule goes, either I screwed up when filling out the form, which is the most likely thing, but I noticed my description for my panel was the description that I in the field of I want this to be in the con guide, and then right underneath it was describe the content of your panel to the staff, and so both of those appear, and so first thing I've got my thing, and then if you scroll down, it's this is what this panel consists of. I'm showing these things, and it's wow. Okay, well maybe that didn't need to be in there.
That didn't happen to me, so that might have been.
Must have been on my end. Huh. That's my guess. They had 70 days to put this whole con together, start to finish. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to take a real quick break to say this episode of the Anime World Order podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, RightStuffAnime.com, where right now they are doing a manga survey to gauge interest on whether or not people want there to be a reprint of the Aria manga by Akari Mizunashi. It's been out of print for a while. If you try to get volumes that you're missing on the secondary market, they're ridiculously expensive. But it's also not a super popular manga, and it had very strict licensing guidelines as far as what particular printing process that has to be used to print it, which makes it very expensive to print in small quantities. So if you were interested in reading Aria the Masterpiece, or if you were missing select volumes, head on over to their site, fill out the survey to gauge the demand. It's not a guarantee that they'll be able to actually secure a new run of the books, but if enough people respond, then they can probably do it. Remember what we said about the demand for manga being really high. If things go out of print, they're going to be out of print for a while. So do head on over to our website, www.animeworldorder.com. Look on the right side sidebar, click on the Right Stuff affiliate link to go to Right Stuff. Take the survey. While you're at it, hey, there's probably some things out there you want to buy. Right now, as we record this, stuff from Viz is currently up to 28% off. So if you've been eyeing those JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Blu-rays, go ahead and make that purchase through Right Stuff by clicking our affiliate link. We'll get a small commission back for that purchase. They've also currently got Wellgo Pictures stuff on sale. Wellgo Pictures had a dedicated video room at Otakon for live action stuff from Asia, one of which I'd like to recommend called Gundala, Rise of a Hero. This is an Indonesian superhero movie, which played in the video room. Retail price $29.98, but on sale it's $17.99 at Right Stuff. Or if you have their Got Anime membership, you get an additional 10% off, which makes it $17.09 because, hey, it's already on sale. Listen, what do you want from me? Anyway, back to the con report.
Outside of panels, there were other things going on. Shockingly, we did have a dealer's room and an artist alley.
Yes.
Yeah, no industry, so no big giant industry booths.
No.
There.
It was people who I think could conceivably drive there.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I noticed about the dealer's room is even though there was like lots of space in the back where there would typically be the big industry booths, most of the time space that would typically reserve for the autographs and stuff.
They didn't like spread out the
dealer's booths themselves. That's correct.
Yeah.
They were pretty much all packed together. And the same thing was true for the artists in the artist alley. Yes, there were like wide lanes for the traffic, but like the actual artists all still had to be like directly adjacent to each other. And it seemed like they had...
It's classic COVID restrictions, right? Where the only restrictions that you get are ones that protect the customers and not the people who actually have to do the retail work of interfacing with them.
Yeah. Even the customers, like, I mean, they had fairly wide, like, aisles, but still, it was so crowded packed at the booth. So
I kind of snuck in as early as I could get in, and when it was like relatively empty, and just like ran around, looked at stuff, and then tried to get out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
The line for the dealer's room was ridiculous at first. Because I think we tried to go initially on Friday, and it was just like...
If people weren't wearing masks, it would look like any other year.
Yeah.
The only real visual difference from walking around was that everyone had masks on.
Yeah.
And like there was no like other real difference. Yes, there were hand sanitizing stations like all over the place. The only place you could really get water was if you went into a panel room, it seemed like. It didn't seem like there was water.
No.
Readily distributed.
No.
Well, I mean, I wasn't super surprised just like with the COVID situation, but still.
But then I would kind of expect there to be none of them available rather than just kind of selectively available.
Right, yeah.
It was weird, but I mean, largely the same sort of situation in both the artist alley and the dealer's room. What I like to do is I like to go through the artist alley and I kind of like to take a look and see if I can get sort of a broad idea of what the artists are selling popular. And what is popular.
What are people into?
And what I expect to be there and what is the reality.
I think the interruption of the cons probably, resulted in a lot of people not producing much.
Yes. That was
stock.
Exactly my take.
Yeah, and like not really making a lot of new stuff. Like I think some people had things that they had done like to sell online, or maybe they were able to do like some prints prior. Right. But yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of like newer stuff that didn't really quite show up or didn't show up as much as I expected.
I would say almost anything from the last year.
Yeah, it felt like it was basically frozen in amber from last year. Like Chainsaw Man was only very slightly represented in there. A couple other things I would have expected to see. Jujutsu Kaisen.
I expected more Witcher stuff.
I expected there to be a lot. Yeah, I expected there to be a lot more VTuber stuff because that kicked off in a big way during the pandemic.
Yeah, VTuber Animal Crossing. I saw very little Animal Crossing.
Very little of any of it. And I don't necessarily think it has to do with popularity so much as this stuff happened during the pandemic. Maybe they didn't produce anything during the pandemic for this stuff.
There was definitely some Genshin Impact stuff, but not as much as I expected.
Right.
So,
but yeah, you're all absolutely correct. Like, I think just everything that like came out in 2020 may as well have not even been at the convention at all. I think the only thing that like seemed like it was a new emerging thing was I was pointing out like, hey, there's a surprising amount of people already cosplaying Chainsaw Man's stuff. And I'm like, wait, when that anime comes out, that's
it's going to be
probably going to blow up and be like pretty big.
Yeah.
Provided that it lives up to the expectation, which all suggestions suggest that, yeah, they're going to do another great job on that. So that I'm anticipating that to be like the big thing next year.
It's also very easy to cosplay, which I think is going to help a lot.
You just have to wear like a white dress shirt and a black suit and then a wig, maybe.
Right.
And
I fully expect that to go like, you know, if that anime lives up to expectations, I'm expecting like Attack on Titan level popularity for that, honestly.
And Evan, you said you had 2 theories?
Yeah, like one of the theories I think is what you mentioned, that like people not producing, at least maybe not producing art that they were prepared to sell in print form. But the other one is, I think, and I'd be interested to talk to artists about this, I kind of suspect that like part of how artists are deciding what's going to work in the dealer's room is by seeing what other artists are selling and then talking to their friends and stuff. Right. That like network of kind of seeing what the zeitgeist is, like that was online, right? But there wasn't this sense of like, oh, I'm sitting all day at the table and I see, you know, all this Chainsaw Man stuff or all this Animal Crossing stuff. And so it was everybody just sort of taking a shot in the dark and taking whatever they already had. Right.
I remember we went to an Otakon in like 2017 or something. It was the year that Devilman Crybaby came out. And I expected the Artist Alley to be awash in Devilman Crybaby. And there were maybe like 2 things I saw there. And I asked an artist about it. And they said that oftentimes what happens with that stuff is Devilman Crybaby came out in January.
And all at once.
And yeah, all at once in January, and the con happens in like July or August. They said like it was super popular in January and February and was burned out by the time Otakon came about. Like nothing was selling.
Yeah, I think it always gets complicated. Like once you have no more source material, it's not necessarily that fandoms definitely like die, but you often do see like once no new source material is coming out, you're going to see a lot of drop off and people are going to pick up new stuff instead. I mean, if you have a fandom that was like really huge, then I don't know what like percentage it is probably, but I suspect it's like a certain percentage of people are going to drop off. And so if you have something that's like enormous, then even if like whatever percentage of people drop off, then you still have a sizable number of people creating stuff. But then especially if it's like a smaller thing or like it was a very short-lived thing and didn't have like time to build up a huge head of steam, you're probably going to get more drop off.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I still do see Devilman Crybaby stuff. I saw a handful there, but I saw one single piece of Tsuritama art. And when I mentioned it, the person was like, you're the only person who said anything about that.
Yeah, I only saw like maybe one thing total for Odd Taxi. And I don't know if Odd Taxi was necessarily a huge hit, but it's at least got a following among like certain sets of people. And you'd think like, okay, there would be some more of it, but no.
And I wonder also, like, I know that for some of the things that people do, like keychains and stuff like that, you've got to order that stuff and get it shipped to you initially. And so I'm sure, like, all of the shipping issues.
Anything that has to be, like, internationally shipped due to the supply chain disruptions and things. Okay, you're going to have some difficulties meeting that.
You know what's the other one I expected in there that I saw almost none of, maybe zero of, is Molcar in the Artist Alley.
In the Artist Alley,
at least Gerald got the big Molcar jackpot in the dealer's room.
That's right. I saw it and I almost bought something there and I was going to come back for it and I didn't make it back.
It probably should have been half the price I paid for it, but I also know that I'll never see it again.
That's why I didn't buy it. It was a little expensive.
It was way too expensive for what it was, but I also know I will never see it again. I can add it to the plushes that are looking out the window, so it works.
You got to make the noises whenever you squeeze it.
Yes.
I can't do the noise. The wheat.
It was definitely a weird year. And as we've said, like probably Otakon had to hold it, otherwise they wouldn't hold a 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm hoping that next year this is taken care of and we can see each other without masks on. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe like actually go to room parties or have like a big dinner with people.
Yeah, we avoided that. We did avoid that.
Yeah, we avoided them, but we also not invited to any of them.
Right.
So
well, that's my excuse.
Always invited to those things. I feel like I mention it almost every year.
Well, no, we didn't know any of them were happening, but we weren't going to go.
We were told straight up, like, there's one happening and I cannot get you to it.
That was Otabrew, which is Ed's, you got to pay up front in advance and all that stuff like that because they rent out some venue. But yeah, right. that's that one. And then the other one is like the control center one that's only for con staff.
Oh, yeah. I did not go to that because usually the reason to go to that is you can meet guests and stuff. But yeah, it's
industry networking.
There weren't Japanese guests to meet there. And also I was being a little conservative about any kind of partying. I did do some room party stuff with people I knew were vaccinated, but would not be, I didn't want to be like going into a potentially large party with a bunch of people I don't know. No. Where it's like,
exactly.
This is not the year for that.
Yeah.
I'm usually bad at those anyway, and so just my excuse.
So, I mean, it was really nice to see people, but I think always with cons, it's like you never get to see people as much as you'd like because everyone's busy going back and forth to do panels and interviews and whatever else. But I feel like especially just because, we weren't necessarily doing some of those dinners or parties or anything, it was nice to see people, but I wish that I had gotten to like actually talk to people more.
I saw you, Clarissa, for I think maybe a grand total of 60 seconds at the convention.
Yeah. Right. I saw like Dave like briefly.
Yeah.
But also, you hadn't been moving a whole lot for the last 2 years. And so the rigors of walking around a convention.
Oh my God, I was so exhausted.
Yeah, I got blisters on my feet. A couple people reported blisters. It seemed like maybe we just had not been used to all this walking.
I went home like slightly early on Friday because I just like, I think maybe like I didn't drink enough water. And of course it was hot. And so I was like, oh my God, I feel terrible. And so then I didn't make it in as early as I intended on Saturday because I was just like still kind of wiped from the prior day. And then, I kind of opted out on Sunday because there weren't that many panels happening.
I mean, if you're going to miss a day anyway, Sunday is usually fine.
But it was kind of this weird inverted thing. Like COVID made the experience so different where I was like, yes, Sunday. It's so much less crowded and I can like go to panels now.
Yeah.
Because Saturday, I think we've already talked about this, but I just fully regret attending the convention at all on Saturday. It was way too many people. Like I would have gone during maybe off hours Friday and Sunday and not gone Saturday if I had known. I would have probably not shown up at all if I had known what it was going to look like.
Right, because on Friday it seemed like it was okay. We could, if everyone's smart, we can probably manage this for the most part. And Saturday it's like, yeah, there's way too many people here.
Yeah.
My thought was that they were going to be down, not a lot, but down.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a small con.
I thought,
Yeah, I was expecting a lot fewer people.
I submitted panels based on the assumption that it was like, nobody's going to be there. I'll try some stuff out.
Yeah, and I mean, it was like we said, it was not noticeable at all.
I mean, I get there Friday morning and like the line was enormous and I was like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be this many people.
Yeah, I think in our defense, Gerald, to your point about like owning the decision to go, that was like, I think what a lot of us thought. And that's the irony, right? Is a bunch of people showed up, maybe even some of those, 26,000 attendees showed up thinking like, yeah, this is going to be a small convention. It's not going to be that big a deal. I'm vaccinated, whatever.
Right.
And then showed up and went, 26,000 other people thought that.
Yeah. I hope that next year more people are vaccinated so we can be back to normal and we can have a normal convention.
Yes.
What if this is the normal convention from now on? Huh?
It might. Look, the people that are not making it normal are rapidly dying.
That's one way of looking at it.
If enough of them freaking die, then maybe we can get back to normal.
Maybe that by that time we can finally get some kind of fucking vaccine mandates or something.
Anime NYC does have a vaccine mandate now as required by the city of New York. So we are seeing some progress. Well, I just
mean like not just events, but like, because like, I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done before. I mean, there were vaccine mandates in places like Boston, I think it was, for like smallpox epidemics and stuff more a century ago. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why none of us have polio.
In New York, and this is spreading, I think San Francisco just did it. They are requiring vaccines now to eat indoors and things like that. So that I think will hopefully provide people some extra
I think the problem is
impetus.
all the states that just refuse to do it. So I feel like that's it. I feel like at some point it has to be like a federal thing because there's just too many like asshole Republican governors.
Well, unfortunately, there are a bunch of people whose definition of freedom is I can do whatever I fucking want. Fuck you.
That's right.
And that is not what freedom is.
Oh yeah, they're fucking like 5-year-olds, like basically throwing temper tantrums. Like, it's extra hilarious to me because it's always the same people that call other people snowflakes, but then like do something mildly inconvenient so that other people don't die, and then it's like just.
Well, to that point, in terms of those people, I was not at the con feedback session, but I heard from the Reverse Thieves, Al and Kate, that there were some of those people at the con feedback session, and when people suggested a vaccine mandate for next year if COVID is still around, and they were booed by a handful of assholes in the crowd, and then
literally 3 people,
and then they were drowned out by cheers from the rest,
and drowned out by applause from everyone else,
which is good.
But
I mean that's good. Like honestly, I thought that I was going to see more people make a stink about it, but I mean I was surprised. Like for the most part, people seemed really good about at least the masking.
It was I have to say, to the convention's credit, it was the best mask compliance I've seen in I think any situation, like better than like when I flew to New York, when I moved out in
general public, better than the airports, better than the museums we went to, definitely better than the restaurants. I think the compliance, at least among that local DC crowd and the people who travel into DC, was fantastic.
Yes.
My guess is if there were the similar type of convention with a similar sort of lax enforcement on the part of the staff, and they did it here in Florida.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Very different.
Or maybe not as different. For the record, since we recorded this, Florida just did MegaCon over the last weekend, and while mask compliance was not quite as rigorous as Otakon, judging from the pictures and the videos people have posted, it was still very good, and they were throwing people out for refusing to comply. On social media, I saw at least one angry Karen lady sending her complaint to Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida saying, hey, they threw me out of MegaCon. Isn't this a free country? Which I hope is real. You'll love to see it.
In DC, like when I was walking around DC, mask compliance generally, like people were wearing masks outdoors in scenarios where I didn't expect them to, because honestly, like they're not that important outdoors, right? But people were wearing them anyway.
Who was the one person you saw without a mask walking around outside, Gerald?
Oh, no, that was an airport, and that was the police. That was a policeman.
Of course.
So the only person who didn't have a mask was a cop.
Protect and serve.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going back and forth a lot on AWA, and I think I'm probably not gonna make it, but
we're all leaning against it right now as of this moment. Obviously, Otakon, so far, so good, at least to me anyway, but it seems like the situation is going to worsen rather than get better between now and October. And so, never say never, but right now I'm leaning against not going to AWA.
And I'd have to fly, so
if I were flying
like
or traveling
extra
to family or friends, I would be fine with it. But going to a con in October, when typically the stuff is at their worst, so we're talking worse than now, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess unfortunately it's still a wait and see.
I feel like AWA has to convince me
overall
to go right now. Nothing against AWA, it's just the situation is...
Well, no, we love AWA
it's
generally.
Just bad.
But
like, I think it's just Georgia is another one of those states with like the Republican governor who's like F you to the vaccine mandates and stuff like that. Though for the record, since we recorded this, Dragon Con in Georgia, which is happening over Labor Day weekend in about 2 weeks, did say they're capping attendance, requiring masks for everyone, and you have to show proof of vaccination or a negative test result that's less than 72 hours old. On top of all that, they're saying panel room max capacity is going to be set at 2/3 what it normally is. They're going to move the seats around a bit. Events are going to have line closures. There will be multiple online panel streams and deep cleaning of the event spaces, not just overnight, but also once during the day. They're going to roll out the schedule. So a lot of these things that we were saying that Otakon should do, Dragon Con is doing them, so they can be done.
I think for Anime NYC, I am leaning towards showing up for an Azuki panel and then just seeing people outside the con. Because that's one where, like you had with Otakon, Clarissa, like I'm local, so I can hop in and then leave, and I'm not committed for the weekend.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That is Otakon 2021. Does anybody have any final thoughts on it?
No, I just want to thank Evan for being here for these 2 hours to talk about this convention.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd love to come on again sometime, but I'll have to find a new job.
Right. Yes, you have to change professions, make a new startup. Maybe if this is, if you want to keep in terms of the trend, maybe the next one can be called Current Eye, like shouting outs to, 2000s era porn artists. But once again, Evan's site and his podcast is over at Anigamers.com. We've got a link over on the sidebar of our website, which is AnimeWorldOrder.com. We look forward to hearing from you again, hopefully sooner rather than later. No curses or hexes on Azuki. Go check out the site. There is a 30-day free premium trial.
And we have first chapter of all of the Kodansha series are available for free right now.
Excellent.
Yeah, so check out that, see how you like the reader and things like that. Maybe it will have some better support than some of these other online web readers over the years may have gotten. But see it for yourself by checking that out.
Thank you.
I guess that is it for either this whole episode or we may come back with a review.
It's long enough that I think we could just release
It's about 2 hours. I think we're probably good with just
this.
Nice to have a regular old AWO recording, 2 hours about a convention.
Most people did not attend listening to this, but they're hearing us talk mostly not even about the convention, but about the same stuff that they're hearing about.
Most people would be foolish to go to the convention, so... All those people that canceled, we probably made the smart decision.
I mean, somehow, even though this is the kind of shit we do all the time, people still listen to us, so...
It's called a parasocial relationship.
Yeah. We're the worst at that, though, because I'm terrible at social media.
Now, the suggestion has been made that if we wanted to do online versions of our panels without risk of the DRM cops showing up, what we should do is we should build a Discord community up around our existing Discord. We just have to build it out and then use some of that Patreon money to pay for the Discord Nitro, which is $100 a year or 120 if you pay month to month. Then you can just run whatever you want and then to your own community and just be like, hey, we're going to be doing this on whatever time, show up. That could be an option. But perhaps in order to do that, we would have to be more promotional of the Patreon, which we didn't even mention at any point during the 2 hours of this. And the reason we didn't mention it is because, as of course, we've let people know that once we get to a certain goal, we will have to review Handshakers. And that goal is not monetary.
Karma. Finally, after Gerald made me review it.
See, you fucking cursed us.
That's right. The background is Gerald made Evan review Handshakers. That has also occurred. But we have gained some new patrons, but we're still far away from ever having to review Handshakers because the total count is at 191 and we got to get to like 250 or something like that. So I think we're years away from ever having to talk about Handshakers. But, perhaps it might be a future benefit that, if you are a patron, you get access to the Discord or who knows how that works. I don't feel like charging money to get people on the Discord. But, at some point, if we decide that, hey, we make enough that we can throw $100 a year at Discord Nitro and then do some of these panels that you've talked about, but you haven't had a chance to see, maybe that can be the...
Definitely hit us up on Twitter or leave a comment on AnimeWorldOrder.com because I'm curious about this because there's a lot of people, especially like our international listeners, who just could never, ever come to America to see a panel. And so is there an interest to do something like that? Let us know.
Absolutely.
And so without further ado, that is it for now. Thank you so much, Evan, for putting up with us for 2 freaking hours about this.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, it was great.
Yes, always great to have you.
Yeah, I'd love to come on and review an anime again, so we'll figure that out.
Thank you for listening, and that is it for this episode.